Hi everyone. I'm here. Don't worry, I'm just waiting for a couple of more minutes so that we can have everyone. Okay, I think we can start now. Um, so first of all, I wanted to check some logistics. I don't know if anyone everyone can see me or if my voice is okay. So if not, if there is any problem, please feel free to use the chat. I will be checking it regularly. So just let me know if things are not okay. And because I can't see anything, I assume that you can see me and hear me okay at the moment. Hope everyone is doing well today. So thank you for taking the time to join and to collaborate basically over our topic today, which is compliance essentials for the UK businesses. And we will be navigating the legal and regulatory obligations basically for the UK businesses. I'm trying to move the presentation. Just a second. Okay. So before we start, I wish to talk about the CFE Start. So CFE Start is an independent auditing company, and it provides a wide range of services within the global scale. The services includes gap analysis, training, audit, and certification services in different industries, different sectors such as information security. Across different fields and sectors, but the areas are information security, business continuity, IT service management, quality management, GDPR, and personal data management system. It's a member of various organizations, one of them being is British Education Accreditation Authority, called CPD Certification Service. Another one is the Association of the British Certification Bodies, ABCB. And at the same time, it is accredited by UCAS and IAS, which are very prestigious accreditation organizations. So basically, you're on safe hands. That's what I can tell. A little bit of about myself. My name is Merve. I'm a dual qualified lawyer, which means I'm an attorney registered in Turkey in Ankara Bar Association, and at the same time I'm registered in England and Wales as a solicitor. And I work in the corporate, commercial, and compliance environment as a legal team lead at the moment in one of the biggest, if not the biggest, technology organization in the world. I work on compliance matters basically a lot. That's why you're listening to me today. Our agenda is that we will first discover the legal foundation. These are the subtopics. We're going to talk about the company registration and financial compliance. The second part is people and privacy compliance. So we will discuss HR compliance, data protection, and trade regulations. And these two are the general compliance aspects. But as a third topic, we will also touch the specialized compliance and business considerations. That means there is this general aspect of compliance, but at the same time, there are some exceptions, or maybe there are certain things that you need to also focus if you're in a particular business field, let's say. Thank you, by the way, Kasim. I'm also checking the chat, and I'm glad to hear that everything is well. So let's start with what compliance is. Some of you already may know because you may be working in this field, or maybe you don't know any idea. Both of are okay. So I think it's always good to start with the definition. So compliance, especially within the context of business, it basically refers to a certain it refers to an adherence, let's say, to laws, regulations, guidelines, and specifications relevant to basically this business operations. When I say, so basically that's the process that businesses have to ensure that they're aware of, and then they take those steps to basically comply with those relevant laws and regulations. It is important because we will talk about it, but if the business is not compliant, if basically you're not following those relevant laws or regulations, then that means you're not compliant. And if you're not compliant, then that means you're going to have some legal penalties, your company's integrity may be in danger, and you may lose basically customer trust, and basically your organization may be under danger in terms of the reputation. And so basically, obviously, when we talk about compliance, it comes with a legal framework that sets the compliance rules. So these are the rules that you have to adhere as business. When I say you, by the way, I refer to you as a business. So just basically take it as business when I mention that. So basically, the UK businesses, they must adhere to laws set by Parliament. So the laws are set by Parliament, but at the same time, there are some government agencies. Government agencies that determine some regulations that you have to comply with, and there are some industry bodies, and they set some standards. So it's not just the laws that is set by Parliament, but at the same time, there are government agencies and industry bodies that basically impose certain rules in terms of the compliance for the UK businesses. And as mentioned, and as we will be mentioning a lot probably, is that if you don't compliant, if you're in the non-compliance stage, then basically you will face legal penalties, financial losses, reputational damage, and operational disruptions. So that's why we are talking about compliance, as it is quite important for businesses. Now I want to provide a little overview. So that's what we will be talking about. It's just for you to see, basically for you to see this within a couple of pages, just to have the overall idea. So under the business formation and structure, we will be discussing about the company registration, and this registration is going to be within Companies House. At the same time, when I say it, not every business needs to register with Companies House. So first of all, actually, you need to choose the right business structure for yourself. But as I will be mentioning later, we will be discussing this more for the limited company. So that's why Companies House, I think it's something that you definitely need to keep it in your mind for today's session at least. But it's not necessarily that you're going to be operating as a limited company. You may be operating as a sole trader or partnership, and there are various business structures. So the first step is basically to choose that right business structure. And then if applicable, you need to apply for registration to the Companies House. And then financial compliance is quite important. So when I mean financial compliance, I refer to tax regulations, and you will be dealing with HMRC a lot in terms of tax. And when I mean tax, I will be referring to corporation tax, VAT, VAT, and payee. So there are certain additional tax requirements that may be imposed to your business, depending on the field. But these are the main side of the tax aspect. And then there are some financial reporting standards that the business needs to comply with. The most important ones are UK GAAP and IFRS. We will be talking about that. And on top of everything, in terms of the financial compliance, there needs to be annual accounts filing and audit requirements as well. So we will mention all of this in a deeper context. And the third part is HR and employment compliance. So employment rights are quite important. So there are certain acts and regulations, such as Employment Rights Act. There are some regulations around health and safety, and data protection will be always there in any field, but obviously it's under HR and employment compliance as well, because it's quite important. So these were the general here. Basically, these are the general compliance requirements. But then if you are going to provide services or function in different industry, then you need to add more things to there. For example, if you're going to provide financial services, then there are certain authorities that you need to follow, and you need to register, and you need to comply with their rules. Healthcare, food and beverage, telecommunications are also unique industries in terms of the compliance. And then so there are some compliance areas, for example, in terms of these are also, like, in addition to registration, audits, finance, HR, you need to comply with some intellectual property rights. You need to intellectual property rules. You need to comply with technology and data security rules. Again, GDPR, and especially if you're going to provide services on the international scale, then you need to have a different data protection compliance processes, let's say. So there are some specialized compliance areas as well. If you're going to have international trade, then you need to bear in mind that Brexit happened, so there are some post-Brexit trade implications there. You need to bear in mind customs declarations, international trade agreements, export control and licensing. And sustainability is something that I come across a lot nowadays. So it is quite important. You need to basically make sure, again, it depends what type of services you're providing, but it is there and it is being discussed a lot. So you need to also comply with environmental regulations, corporate social responsibility, discussions and green certifications and reporting. So these are all the things that you have to keep always on top of your mind. Basically, if you want to have a business in the UK or if you're already having a business in the UK. Now I think we can dive into this a little bit more. So maybe let's start with types of business entities. As I mentioned, that's going to be the first step. So this is a obviously very broad topic, and it's just one aspect of today's conversation. So I'm not going to stay here for a long time, but at the same time, I think it's just good to have a little bit of idea about this. But it all depends on what you need. There are many criteria here. So I mean, I think it's always better to discuss this on a case-by-case basis. But let's see what are the options at least. What the options are at least. So for example, let's start with sole trader. So sole trader is a very simple business structure. It involves only one individual, and that individual basically is responsible for all debts and liabilities. This part is important because if you want to act as a sole trader, then you're liable as person. So basically, your assets are going to be liable. It doesn't offer a separate legal persona, let's say. Partnership is if you don't want to trade as one person, but if you want to have 2 or more individuals, and if you want to share the risks, responsibilities, profits, then partnership is a good medium. But if you are after partnership, then you have to basically have a partnership agreement for sure that outlines the terms of the partnership. Limited company, I think that's the most relevant one for our conversation today. So it is a separate legal entity. So if you don't want to have any personal liability, then I think limited company is a good option because again, the company itself has the legal personality. So it is responsible. You can think it as a person itself. So it is liable for debts and other things. Obviously, if you have the directorship position or if you're working there, you will be having your own responsibilities, but the company itself will have its own legal personality. And that's why that's why it's called limited, because the protection is the protection in terms of liability is limited. And the directors run the company. The profits then are owned by the shareholders. Maybe the question here would be why would I want to have basically why would I want to be a sole trader if limited company itself will be responsible? Then the answer is it's also complex. You basically need to comply with many things when it comes to limited company. So that's one of the hesitations that basically may come to the surface here. But that's why we're talking about the compliance. So if you want to go to that path, then you have to basically be compliant. Public limited company. So it is similar to the limited company, but it says public. So the public refers that it offers its shares to the public. And because of this public aspect, you have to, you will have more compliance obligations, let's say. I mean, because it has even more responsibility because it's public. So it is a little bit more strict than I think limited company. I think that's fair to say. And also you have to have at least 50,000 pounds share capital, which is not a requirement for limited company. Limited liability partnership. I think I just want to say here that it is a combination of limited company and partnership. But I don't want to really stay here too long. And then if your organization benefits the society, if there is any objective that is beneficial for the society, then you may also consider social enterprises and charities. But again, it's just to mention the options that we have. And this is just a simplified version of it. Limited companies under the roof of corporation here. So it just shows where we are today. So let's first of all, now I want to talk about the formation, the company formation, and what to consider. And then we are going to be more specific. So as I mentioned, first of all, you have to select the appropriate business structure. And then if applicable, you need to apply it to company's house. And then you basically need to, of course, give enough consideration of what is the implication of applying to company's house, and why, what would be the implication to select that business structure. So that's one side. And then depending on what you choose, you may be subject to statutory requirements. That means you may need to maintain certain records, you need to file certain reports annually, and any changes need to be reported as well. So if you're selecting limited company, then you're subject to Companies Act, which is quite comprehensive. So basically you need to be compliant definitely with Companies Act 2006. And corporate governance is quite important. So you need to establish a board of directors if you're choosing limited liability. If you're choosing limited company, then you have to establish a board of directors for decision making. You need to think about how you're going to handle the annual meetings and how it's going to be basically managed, how the company is going to be managed. And then because you will have shareholders, you also need to think about the voting rights, how the dividends, for example, will be shared, and the rights of these shareholders. And insolvency is also important, so you also need to give a consideration, give it some consideration in terms of, you know, if an insolvency comes to the stage during your company's lifetime. So we already actually entered, I mean, all of these things, most of these things that I mentioned, it's applicable to limited company. So now let's be a little bit more specific, and I think you can, from here on, you can start thinking about the limited company. So how to register a limited company and what the key steps are. I will show a chart after this page, after this slide, and then I'm going to give a little bit more side steps, let's say, but these are the key steps. So these are the must. First of all, you need to select a company name, and we can't just select a company name like that. So first of all, you need to ensure that the company name is acceptable. There are certain rules around here too. You can't, you can or you cannot choose certain names. It is basically, you can find more details in government websites and in the Companies Act, but not every company names are acceptable. The easiest thing to say here, I think, it's that your name, for example, cannot be offensive, but it cannot suggest that you're a government entity. That's one of the things. So you need to make sure of these aspects too. And obviously, you have to make sure that it is unique and it's not used or registered in somewhere else. And after selecting the company name, now it's time to prepare necessary documents. So you will have a memorandum of association and articles of association. But when it comes to articles of association, now you need to know that there is already articles of association that is applicable by default to limited companies. But if you want to change those articles, then you have to prepare an amendment, addendum. And if you are not happy at all, and if you want to have a tailored articles of association that is different than what government provides, then you need to basically have those bespoke articles of associations. But these documents, they're going to be there for your company. And after having those documents, then you will have to file with Companies House. And then there is going to be a registration fee, so you have to pay those fees when you're filing to the Companies House. And thereafter, you will obtain a certificate of incorporation. And as soon as you obtain the certificate of incorporation, that means that your company is now existing legally. So that is a quite important part, basically. And this is now it explains a little bit all the steps, not just the key steps. So let's go from 1 to 8 and then see how it looks like when you establish a limited company. So first of all, as you mentioned, let's say you have to choose the appropriate structure for your firm. And then we did that, and then we have to select a business name. We did that, and then you have a registered business address. So after that, you need to choose the directors and stakeholders. You need to gather the necessary paperwork, and then you need to also acquire the SIC code. SIC code refers to the code that the company will be. Basically, there are certain codes that the company there are certain codes that the government provides, and it refers to the field that the business will be operating. So that's why you need to acquire the SIC code, and they will know what type of services you're providing, in which field you're operating. So that's why it's important. And after having all these things ready, then you can apply for business registration. And if everything is good, then you will acquire the certificate of incorporation, as I said. So then you have a legally existed entity. So now I want to pause here for a second, and before we jump into financial compliance, I wonder if there is any questions. I keep checking the chat as well, but if I miss anything, just please feel free to interrupt. I'm also checking if there's any other questions. I think we're good. So now how long does it take for a company to form? So that's one question I have now in the chat. But it is really hard to answer these questions, because it all depends on what basically how you're prepared in terms of this stages. It can take a couple of weeks, but it can take a couple of months as well. So it all depends how complex the structure is, how you basically wish to identify your business, how many directors, how many shareholders will be involved. So it is a quite difficult question to answer, actually. But I will need to also check, like, if you're referring to, for example, the time frame between applying for business registration and acquiring certificate of incorporation. I'm sure there is a time frame that is provided, but it is really difficult to say that. I can take it offline and reach out to you, Soumya, and then try to give you maybe a more defined time frame if I can. But yeah, thank you for the question, though. I think it's a good question. But I mean, based on my experience, I came across where it took just a week or so. So I think I can say that. So it is not necessary that it is going to take a long time, basically. But it may. So jumping to financial compliance, I'm moving on to financial compliance. So I will basically for some of the items here, I want to also talk a little bit more. So it's not repeating myself, I hope, but tax compliance, financial reporting, and audit requirements, I will also talk about it in another in different slides. But just to have an overview, under financial compliance, there is tax compliance, which refers to understanding and meeting the requirements for corporation tax, VAT, payee, and national insurance contributions. When it comes to tax compliance, it is very important that you register for the right tax schemes, and then you submit your tax returns on a timely manner. Otherwise, there is going to be basically financial consequences and fines. So that's why it's quite important to know these timelines and registration requirements. Because, for example, for VAT, not every business needs to do that. So it's important to basically identify those things. Accounting standards. You need to make sure that you're maintaining accurate financial records in accordance with UK Generally Accepted Accounting Practice, UK GAAP, or International Financial Reporting Standards, IFRS, whichever is appropriate. Usually, bigger businesses that operate on the global scale, they basically follow International Financial Reporting Standards. But I think just because now we are covering the basics of it from the very general context, it is important to know that there are these accounting standards for financial records. Financial reporting, private companies. When I say private companies, again, I refer to limited companies. Private companies must file annual accounts with Companies House, and those annual accounts includes balance sheet, profit and loss accounts, and notes about those accounts. So it's there. In terms of audit requirements, certain businesses must have their annual accounts audited. When I say certain businesses, I mean that if you're not a small business, because if you're a small business, then you will be exempt. This criteria that basically makes you not a small business anymore is if you're having a turnover of more than 10.2 million pounds, assets over 5.1 million, or if you have more than 50 employees, then you have to basically have your annual accounts audited. Otherwise, there is no requirement, but it's a good practice. Anti-money laundering. You need to implement certain anti-money laundering controls and procedures to prevent financial crime. It is also quite important for UK businesses. And you need to your business needs to comply with the Proceeds of Crime Act and money laundering regulations in which outline these controls and procedures in terms of anti-money laundering. So we are still under the financial compliance title, but again, as I mentioned, let's talk about tax compliance a little bit more. Corporation tax. So businesses, definitely, they must register for corporation tax. Private companies, they must register for corporation tax. They have to file their tax returns annually, and they have to pay taxes on their profits. So again, the deadlines for registration, filing, and payment should be strictly adhered to. It's quite important. Value-added tax, VAT. Not every businesses are subject to VAT, but if your turnover is above certain threshold, then you have to register for VAT, and you have to basically charge correct VAT, and then you have to submit your returns usually every quarter. Pay as you earn. So employers, this is for employees, but employers are responsible for their employees. They must use this payee system to collect income tax and national insurance contributions from their employees' wages and then pay these to HMRC. So basically, employers do this on behalf of their employees. Business rates. There are some. The top three are very important. This is just an exception. So some businesses that are operating out of the physical premises, they may be subject to certain business rates or local taxes. National insurance, we talked about this under the payee, but basically both employees and employers, they have national insurance obligations. So it has to be paid. And there may be, depending on the business activities, there may be some other taxes like stamp duty, excise duties, or capital gains tax. So top three are the most important ones. I put national insurance under payee, but business rates and other taxes, it may not be there. Actually, VAT may not be there, but it is, I think, quite common that, your business may be subject to VAT. So again, we are under financial compliance, but now let's talk about accounting standards. So just never forget UK GAAP and IFRS. As mentioned, if you're a large company, you may want to follow IFRS, but these are the general accounting principles. The Financial Reporting Council also regulates accounting standards in the UK, and it promotes transparency and integrity in financial reporting. So just know basically this entity, FRC, in terms of the accounting. You obviously have to keep accurate record keeping, and everything basically has to be reported accurately and documented. Then consistency and comparability is something that you may want to consider as well, because your reports has to be consistent throughout the different years. So your previous year and current year's reports, financial statements, they have to be comparable and they have to be consistent. This also includes, for example, if you have different entities, they also have to be consistent and comparable. And then, obviously, as I mentioned, you may be subject to audit, so you have to make sure that everything is accurate and reliable. In terms of the financial reporting requirements, so again, annual accounts we mentioned many times. You have to basically have profit and loss account, balance sheet, your basically a fair and true, accurate view of your business's finances. Then you have to file those accounts to the company's house. This is not, we are not talking about tax now, we are talking about the account part. So you have to basically provide certain financial reports to company's house. And alongside with this financial accounts, a confirmation statement must be filed annually to verify your company information, such as like basically you're doing this because you want to say that this is still my registered office, these are my directors, this is my share capital. So basically company's house needs to see these details on a regular basis. And so by the way, as a note, those statements are publicly available because you're having a limited company and company's house keeps this. So basically, it will be there. And this is sometimes it's one of the concerns towards limited company, because not everyone is happy with public disclosure. So it is there and it's going to be publicly accessible. Small business considerations. Small companies, and we talked about the threshold, so they may qualify for simpler accounts, and they may be exempt from certain requirements if you're meeting that criteria. And the criteria is here if we need to go back, just to remind. So turnover has to be below 10.2 million if you have less than 50 employees, or if your assets are less than 5.1 million, then you qualify as a small business. And if you qualify, I think it is advisable to basically make sure that you know your exemptions, and then you are not going to be subject to complexity, as in like, I mean, as if you're a bigger business, let's say. And we talked about HMRC tax returns, but you have to basically also make sure that you're filing your corporation tax return and file it with HMRC, and make sure that you're following the deadlines. So that's the we basically are now moving on to the second subtitle of our presentation of our topic today. So we will talk about people and privacy compliance, data protection and trade regulations. But I also want to stop again for a minute, maybe less than a minute, because I don't want to also run out of the time. But yeah, if you have any questions, I can take them now. Okay, then if there's any question, you can still put them, we can always come back. but now I want to basically proceed with the HR compliance. So HR compliance, when we basically mention HR compliance, I think you need to think about the employment side of things. So first of all, you definitely have employment contracts. It is a legal requirement, and employers need to provide employees with a written statement of employment particulars from day one of the employment. You have to make sure that you know your workers' right, you know the rights of your employees. So, for example, there is a minimum wage compliance, so you have to make sure that you're at least providing a minimum wage. You have to make sure that you're upholding employee rights to, in terms of the leave and time off, regular breaks, annual leave, maternity, paternity leave, and you have to basically adhere to working time and regulations. In terms of equality and diversity, I'm sure you see it everywhere. It's quite important. So you have to follow the Equality Act to prevent discrimination in the workplace and promote equality. You have to make sure that you're basically following health and safety requirements. These are determined under Health and Safety at Work Act. And it includes risk assessments, safety policies, and training. So you have to have those in place. Data protection, we will talk about it in a broader context, in a broader sense, but it is important that you comply with GDPR and Data Protection Act because you're handling your employees' personal data. So that's important too. And you have to make sure that you provide the necessary training and opportunities for employee development. And it can also include the compliance training. So that's my favorite topic, data protection, because it is super, super important. And so basically, first of all, data protection, the regulations for data protection are GDPR and Data Protection Act. And you definitely must go through those because they govern how business should handle personal data. The businesses can have significant amount of fines if they're not in compliance with the personal data. So you may want to think that you wish to appoint a data protection officer. It is mandatory for certain organizations under GDPR. For example, if you're public organization, if you're a public body, then you have to have a DPO, or if you need to work or share the information of your employees, or if you're in the field, then you need to definitely have a data protection officer if you're handling personal data a lot throughout your business. It's not a must, but it is a key figure that ensures that your organization processes personal data in compliance with data protection laws. And then regular audits are quite important. So you need to understand what data is collected, what is the data protection purpose, why you're collecting that data, and whether you're processing this lawfully. And you also have to make sure that you're minimizing the collection of this data. So you have to collect only the necessary data and establish clear mechanisms for obtaining consent, particularly in marketing and customer engagements. So only minimum amount of data, only necessary data, and then you have to basically obtain the consent before even collecting. And then you have to make sure that you have access control system, you have a secure storage solutions to safeguard data against unauthorized access and breaches. Training and awareness in terms of data protection is quite important. So you need to educate your employees about data protection, and they have to recognize and then report those breaches. Definitely they need to be trained on it. And then you have to have a plan because it is quite hard not to breach sometimes, especially that, in the era we are living in at the moment, there may be data breaches. So you have to have a clear plan outlining steps to take in the event of a data breach. that includes timely notification to authorities and affected individuals. In terms of the third-party compliance, so we talk about third-party compliance because there is definitely a third-party involvement in data protection and data processing. So there is employment or a personnel, and then you are there, and then you're passing certain information to vendors and partners. So these are the third parties, and you have to also make sure that those vendors and partners, they are in compliant with data protection. And then record keeping and documentation. You have to basically maintain detailed records of data processing activities as required under GDPR and demonstrate that you're compliant and you're accountable. So these are the basically practical sides in terms of data protection. Now, I'm just stopping for a second to see if I'm receiving any other questions. Or if there is any other issue. Okay, it seems like we are good. So trade regulations, I mean, we can stay here, but because we spent a fair amount of time for the other topic, this is quite important to, obviously, I don't want to bypass it. But basically, under trade regulations, you have to make sure that you understand the Brexit impact, because there are new regulations and procedures for importing and exporting goods and services, both to the EU and globally. So don't forget about Brexit. And customs declarations are important. You need to make sure that you understand the tariff codes, import VAT and potential duties, export control and licensing, because certain goods might require export licenses if they're, for example, strategic or military value. Then you have to ensure that your products meet the UK specific standards, which is actually in line with the first title here. So Brexit impact is important, and you have to stay informed about the new trade agreements the UK establishes. Again, that's Brexit. So it's trade regulations side is more like, I mean, it was always there, obviously, before Brexit too, but you just need to definitely keep yourself updated, especially given that given that there is a Brexit impact there. And we talked about data transfer and GDPR. As I mentioned earlier, it's always there, data protection. So if we need to know all of these things, they were general compliance rules. But there are certain specialized compliance rules and business considerations. So which means if basically the businesses are in certain fields, for example, pharmaceuticals, aviation, fintech, they need to comply with specific regulations that are not broadly applicable to other sectors, but they are applicable to these sectors. Technology and data security. If your business in the technology sector, or if you're heavily reliant on IT, then compliance with data security and cyber laws is crucial, and it includes adherence to the standards like ISO 27001, for example, for InfoSec, information security management. So I think it's key. So don't forget that ISO 27001 if you're in the technology and data security field. We mentioned environmental and sustainability regulations, especially if the company is engaged in industries like manufacturing, energy, transportation, then this is something that you need to definitely look into it in more details, because it is very important. And international trade and export controls, we mentioned it, but if your business operates globally, then that's important. This side is relatively important for you. If your business is in creative, tech or research and development sectors, then you may want to navigate in the intellectual property laws, and you have to make sure that the compliance is essential in terms of the innovations, and you don't want to really infringe any intellectual property rights. And customized compliance programs. So depending on your business, you need to basically develop some customized compliance programs tailored for your business. So within the context of industry-specific compliance, these are there may be more examples, but these are the basically stars of the stage, let's say. So if you're in the financial services, then you have to adhere to the regulations from bodies like Financial Conduct Authority. You have to keep this Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, on top of your head if you're in the financial services industry, and Prudential Regulation Authority as well, PRA. So you then have to focus on consumer protection, financial crime, and operational integrity. And these basically these bodies, they oversee those aspects. So just keep those in your mind if you're in this field. If you're in the healthcare field, then you have to comply with the standards set by Care Quality Commission, CQC. And you have to basically, and the reason for that is that you have to make sure the patient safety and data protection laws. If you are in the food and beverage industry, then you have to check the standards by the Food Standards Agency, FSA. These standards include hygiene, labeling, and traceability requirements. If you're in the construction and building codes, then you have to basically comply with health and safety standards, and you have to think about the environment, telecommunications, and data. So there are some regulations set by Office of Communications, Ofcom. So they basically focus on the fair competition, consumer protection, and technical standards. So again, it's not the list is not limited, so you may need to check specifically for your business. So let me see, we have 6 minutes, 5 minutes even. I don't think we have, okay, we are almost there. So sustainable business practices, I think you're going to receive those presentations, so it's going to be there for you, but I may skip this. As I mentioned, if you're providing services in certain fields, then you may want to check this even more. But obviously, that's also a general compliance practice. So you have to make sure that you're having the environmental compliance as mentioned. So I'm just going to skip this quickly. Yes, so as I mentioned, you basically, the presentation will be shared and you need to provide your email address for that. So we mentioned that, okay, we kept talking about compliance, but what happens if you are not compliant? So financial penalties, I kept saying this, but it is important and it is there. So fines will be imposed, for example, for late filing of tax returns, failure to register for VAT or pay incorrect tax reporting. So the amount it depends, like it depends how much you owed or how delayed you were. So it is there though. Operational disruptions. So if you're non-compliant, then you will be subject to investigations by HMRC or other regulatory bodies, and this will result in significant disruptions to your business operation. There are going to be legal consequences against the company, but at the same time, you're going to be responsible if you're acting as a director. You may be disqualified as a director, you may have personal liability, or you may even face imprisonment. It is that serious. So you may have reputation damage because these records will be in public, so it will damage basically the business reputation, and you may be subject to even more audits, and then basically that will also increase operational burdens, and then you may lose some privileges that you have. For example, you may lose your business licenses or your approved status for certain tax schemes, etc. We already talked about this, but this is the summary. And so I know it's not easy to be compliant, and there are certain challenges. The regulations, for example, they change all the time. So I will follow the steps basically to stay compliant after this this slide. But yeah, things change, so you need to be updated. There are some industry-specific nuances, as we discussed, so you have to keep yourself also informed about your industry specific requirements. Technology and data management is quite important, especially with the evolving technology and digital transformation we are having at the moment. You need to balance the globalization and localization. You have to understand that if you're basically operating in the global sense, then you have to keep those in your mind, but at the same time, you have to comply with the local laws and cultural practices. You need to have adequate resources in finance, in HR, in terms of technology. So you have to have resources, and you have to have integration. It has to be an integral part of your strategic planning and business processes. And you have to basically have a good risk management. You have to identify and then manage risks with non-compliance. So how can you tackle with those challenges? You always have to stay informed because it's constantly changing. So you have to keep your knowledge up to date. You may want to subscribe to your industry related newsletters, attend webinars as you do, and participate in professional networks. Conducting a thorough risk assessment is quite important. You have to have tailored compliance programs depending on your business specific needs, size, industry, geographic locations, training and education. You have to train your employees on on compliance matters relevant to their roles, and then you have to have a culture that ensures that this is everyone's responsibility. Leveraging technology, I think it simplifies things. So there are compliance management software tools out there to process, track changes, and maintain records. I think it makes things easier. And then obviously engaging with experts is not a bad idea. You have to consult with legal and compliance expert to ensure that your practices are up to date and effective. And if you have an internal reporting mechanisms, that will basically then help you not repeat the same problems again, and that will lead to basically improvement. So regular review, update, and with internal reporting mechanisms, you may basically come up with a nice organized structure in terms of compliance, and you will have good practice within your organization. The toolkit, we mentioned all of them. I just wanted to put here so that when you have the material, you will know. This is basically all the government bodies and regulatory agencies that I mentioned throughout the presentation. There are some professional associations and network that I didn't mention, but they're here. Again, it's not limited, there are more, but I think it is a good toolkit. And here there's the legal frameworks and standards. And of course, I always recommend that you go to government websites for up-to-date legislative information. That should be your first resource, even, especially to keep yourself up to date. I think, yeah, we are over a minute, but we started 5 minutes late. So I just want to applaud myself for almost making it on time this time. So thank you so much for your attention. And I'm happy to take any questions. If I don't or cannot reply for any reason at the moment, I will definitely follow up with you after the presentation, and then we can take it offline as well. You can always reach out, always. Okay, I take it as there is no questions. Then I wish everyone a happy new year, Merry Christmas for those who celebrate, and happy holidays. Thank you for your attention once again.